At 1700 local time, aboard the USS Farragut, DDG-99, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer patrolling the tense waters of the Central Caribbean, the tactical action officer received a coded flash message that instantly changed everything. In a single moment, the region's fragile security framework was shaken. Intelligence sharing was suspended. All joint operations were terminated. A partnership built over decades through trust, coordination, and shared purpose with Colombia had been abruptly erased by politics. Colombian President Gustavo Petro had ordered an immediate halt to all joint intelligence activity with the United States, effectively cutting off cooperation at the worst possible moment. For the crew of one of the world's most advanced warships, it meant facing a dangerous mission with far less visibility. The vast Caribbean suddenly felt even larger and far more unpredictable. Only 180 seconds later, before the tactical action officer could fully respond to the order, the Farragut's AN/SPY-1D Aegis radar detected a new and highly unusual contact. It appeared to be a fast, low-profile submersible, believed to be carrying roughly 10 metric tons of high-purity cocaine, moving aggressively through what it assumed was now a political blind spot. What had begun as a diplomatic rupture was rapidly becoming a real-time maritime confrontation. The U.S. Navy had just 12 minutes and 30 seconds to track, identify, and stop the vessel before it could slip beneath deep thermal layers and vanish into the ocean. If that happened, it would confirm a bold new cartel strategy and make the Navy's regional presence look ineffective. This was no longer simply a battle against trafficking. It was a race against confusion, hesitation, and the deliberate use of politics as a shield. At the center of the controversy was the long-running debate over the Navy's use of decisive force in Caribbean interdiction missions. For years, the United States has carried out Operation Martillo, a sustained multinational effort aimed at disrupting maritime smuggling networks. But Petro repeatedly criticized the forceful stopping of advanced trafficking vessels, especially those that refuse to comply, attempt dangerous maneuvers, or threaten interception teams, describing such actions as unlawful killings. That criticism gained traction after an unverified claim that a civilian fisherman had been killed during a previous U.S. strike in September. But the operational reality is far more complex. Criminal organizations use specially built vessels, including high-speed, low-profile boats and difficult-to-detect low-profile submersibles, to move enormous quantities of illicit cargo. These operations fuel regional instability and transnational crime on a massive scale. U.S. policy, supported by maritime law and domestic enforcement statutes, treats these vessels as serious threats, particularly when they combine speed, stealth, and the ability to endanger law enforcement personnel. By suspending intelligence sharing, especially the real-time maritime tracking data provided through Joint Interagency Task Force South, Petro handed these organizations an extraordinary advantage. The U.S. Navy was suddenly placed in the remarkable position of having a key partner undermine the very mission both countries had once supported. What had been a joint effort instantly became a solo test of whether the American detection and response chain could operate flawlessly without outside help or political reliability. The immediate tactical threat came from the Gulf Clan, or Clan del Golfo, a ruthless multi-billion-dollar trafficking network that saw Petro's move as a rare and valuable opportunity. Their strategy had two parts. First, exploit the intelligence gap created by the breakdown in cooperation. Second, provoke a high-profile incident in international waters that could trigger political fallout for the United States. The earlier innocent fisherman narrative was not simply about public sympathy. It was a form of psychological pressure designed to make U.S. commanders second-guess necessary action. Their main operational tools were custom-built stealth vessels, sleek, high-speed, low-profile vessels known as ghosts, capable of maintaining speeds above 50 knots, and even more advanced low-profile submersibles, often referred to as narco-subs. These submersibles are typically constructed from thick fiberglass and carbon fiber, powered by quiet diesel engines, and designed to travel only inches below the surface. That profile makes them extremely difficult to detect with conventional radar and passive sonar because they leave little visible wake and almost no clear signature. These vessels are expensive, often costing around $2 million to build in hidden jungle shipyards, but a single trip can carry up to 10 tons of high-purity cocaine with a street value of more than $300 million. The Gulf Clan's goal was simple: push several of these craft through the gap in the first 48 hours, prove that U.S. surveillance was far less effective without Colombian human intelligence, and create pressure for a long-term strategic pullback from Washington. They believed the USS Farragut, a $2.3 billion warship, was about to become little more than an expensive observer, forced to watch their cargo move past untouched. But the Navy's response, compressed into the frantic 180 seconds between the flash message and the first confirmed contact, showed the opposite. The shift from cooperation to total technological self-reliance was immediate, precise, and deeply revealing. The first response was not political discussion. It was a surge of integrated military capability. A pre-positioned P-8A Poseidon Maritime Patrol aircraft, already operating at high altitude from a secure U.S. base in Curaçao, was redirected at once. Its advanced AN/APY-10 multimode radar is specifically designed to detect the subtle Kelvin wake patterns created by low-profile vessels and submersibles moving stealthily through the water. That sensor data was immediately cross-checked with imagery from an MQ-9B Sea Guardian UAV, which was maintaining long-endurance surveillance at 25,000 feet. The Sea Guardian's most important asset in this scenario was its highly advanced electro-optical and infrared system, capable of tracking a boat-sized target from more than 10 nautical miles away with striking clarity, even as daylight faded into golden hour. In that moment, the USS Farragut's mission changed. It was no longer just an interdiction patrol ship. It became an over-the-horizon precision strike platform. Its Aegis combat system rapidly fused the airborne sensor tracks into the ship's own fire control picture through the high-speed Link 16 network. And the capability that directly disproved both Petro's assumptions and the cartel's confidence was the use of Naval Integrated Fire Control Counter-Air, or NIFCCA, adapted here for a surface-to-surface role. In practical terms, the P-8A and MQ-9B became forward sensor spotters for the destroyer's formidable 5-inch/62 caliber Mark 45 Mod 4 naval gun. The message was unmistakable. Even without political backing, even without a trusted regional partner, the U.S. Navy could still see, track, and act with extraordinary precision. What the cartels thought was a window of opportunity was becoming a demonstration of autonomous American reach, speed, and fire control dominance. What was once a weapon associated with shorefire and close-range naval action had now evolved into something far more advanced. With the Extended Range Guided Munition, or ERGM, the destroyer's main gun had been transformed into a precision strike system capable of reaching targets at distances that once seemed out of reach. In that moment, the U.S. response chain was operating independently, driven entirely by its own sensors, aircraft, and decision-making systems, without depending on outside political approval or foreign intelligence support. The decisive phase began at exactly 1722, as the sun lowered toward the horizon and the sea entered the dim, hazy light of golden hour, a time often favored by smugglers because visibility becomes harder to judge. Overhead, an MQ-9B Sea Guardian, flying a carefully positioned orbit at 25,000 feet, confirmed the target through its advanced EO/IR imaging system. The vessel matched expectations perfectly, a compact, dark, low-profile submersible barely riding above the waterline, moving at 15 knots and heading toward a known deep-water thermocline 35 nautical miles away, where tracking conditions would become far more difficult. The USS Farragut accelerated at flank speed, closing the distance while keeping enough separation to avoid any sudden hostile move from the crew aboard the vessel. At 1745, the captain received final confirmation from the P-8A Poseidon, whose acoustic and magnetic sensors removed any remaining doubt. There were no signs of fishing activity, no emergency indicators, and no evidence of civilian presence. Instead, the data pointed clearly to a professionally operated trafficking platform powered by heavy diesel engines and carrying high-value illicit cargo. The criteria for action were confirmed, the rules of engagement were met, and the final order was given: stop the target. A standard missile was not the right tool for a vessel this small and this fast, and getting close enough for small boat interception carried unnecessary risk. So the destroyer brought its 5-inch/62 caliber Mark 45 Mod 4 gun into action. Loaded into the system was a single ERGM round, a GPS-guided projectile designed to extend the gun's effective reach beyond 20 nautical miles while delivering exceptional precision. At 1747, the MK-45 fired once. One sharp blast rolled across the darkening water. The guided round, launched from exactly 15.2 nautical miles away, followed its calculated arc for 58 seconds. At 1748.08, it struck just aft of the submersible's exposed wheelhouse. The impact was controlled, precise, and devastating to the vessel itself. The blast tore through the fiberglass structure, ruptured internal fuel tanks, and ignited the cargo compartment. Within moments, the submersible lost propulsion and began taking on water fast. In less than 4 minutes, the cartel's multi-million-dollar platform slipped beneath the surface. That moment changed the entire narrative. The U.S. Navy had completed the operation without relying on Colombian intelligence at any stage. Everything, from detection to classification to final engagement, had come from its own integrated network of aircraft, shipboard systems, and over-the-horizon targeting technology. The suspension of cooperation, which was supposed to create an operational gap, had instead exposed how little the mission depended on politics when the full weight of American surveillance and strike capability was brought to bear. As the smoke cleared and the sea settled, the next phase began. The Farragut launched rigid-hull inflatable boats carrying a highly trained U.S. Coast Guard interdiction team. What they found was destruction, but also evidence. Navy personnel, Coast Guard operators, and specialists moved quickly to secure what they could from the sinking vessel before it disappeared completely. Recovered from the scene were large, clearly packaged bales of narcotics marked with a recognizable Gulf Clan insignia, along with advanced satellite communications gear, encrypted equipment, and disposable phones. There was no sign of fishing gear, no civilian equipment, and nothing to support earlier public narratives about innocent maritime traffic. What remained pointed only to a hardened trafficking crew running a professional smuggling mission. The total shipment stopped in the operation was estimated at roughly $320 million in street value, dealing a major financial setback to the Gulf Clan's logistics chain and disrupting funding streams that would have supported future operations for months. But the result went beyond the loss of cargo. The vessel was not only stopped, it became a source of valuable intelligence. Communications gear, markings, and recovered materials gave investigators a path to map out wider trafficking networks, turning a precision strike into a broader intelligence success. Within 12 hours, the Pentagon and Joint Interagency Task Force South released high-resolution synthetic aperture radar imagery, along with unedited EO/IR footage showing the vessel's final movements and images of the recovered cargo and communications equipment. The release of that material effectively ended any lingering suggestion that the target had been a harmless civilian craft and exposed the political theater surrounding the incident for what it was. President Petro's attempt to turn the U.S. Navy into a political symbol had failed almost instantly and very publicly. The suspension of cooperation, meant to create pressure and uncertainty, had instead been followed by the immediate removal of a high-value trafficking asset at sea. Rather than slowing the mission down, it revealed to regional observers, security forces, and criminal groups alike that the U.S. Navy could still act with speed, precision, and confidence, even when a former partner stepped away. The deeper lesson from the confrontation was unmistakable. Petro appeared to believe that cutting off human intelligence would weaken the American interdiction mission and create political room for his own messaging at home. But the results showed the opposite. The Navy's integrated response system, built around sovereign surveillance assets like the P-8A Poseidon and MQ-9B Sea Guardian, proved fully capable of finding, tracking, and stopping a target far beyond the horizon without relying on foreign reporting. The cartel made its own fatal mistake by rushing to exploit what it assumed was a temporary blind spot. Instead, it moved directly into the path of a system that was faster than expected, more precise than anticipated, and completely untouched by diplomatic drama. One guided round fired from more than 15 miles away erased a trafficking platform worth hundreds of millions and sent a message that echoed far beyond the Caribbean. The message was simple. Political friction may complicate headlines, but it does not erase capability. The United States would not step back from securing vital maritime routes. It would adapt, tighten its systems, and continue operating in a way that made political obstruction far less relevant. Public rhetoric may rise and fall, but the quiet reach of the Aegis network, paired with precision-guided naval firepower, remains a constant force in the region.